Welcome to the Mile High podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us from whatever altitude you're at. We are at 5,280 feet here, and that's where you want to be in September of 2023. Yes, Mile High is going to come late in 2023, September 23rd weekend. So make sure you rise up to milehigh.com in September and reserve your seats. And also make sure you hit subscribe so you are always dialed into Mile High Tick. And today I am so thrilled to have back on this podcast a frequent guest, one of my favorite people to talk to, Dr. Monique Andrews. She's a chiropractor, yes, a neuroscientist, an international award-winning speaker. She's spoken on many stages across the chiropractic profession and outside the chiropractic profession. And she's been working and teaching around brain and mind-body connection continuum for 20 years. And she's a frequent speaker at Mile High, as the other half of the dynamic duo, Tamara McIntyre. And so prior to being a chiropractor, she was a research scientist and had published peer-reviewed papers. And we're really just grateful for her gifts that she gives to the chiropractic profession, and to spend time with her today, as I know you will enjoy the time with her today on this podcast. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Monique.
Oh, thanks so much, Danny. I was trying to remember how many times we've done this, and they're all great. I have no idea how many times now, but we always
somewhere 3 or 4 times, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
possibly.
Yeah.
So, and I'm thinking this may not be the last one.
Probably not.
But it may be the best one.
I think it might be.
So you are just coming, you just had your retreat in Costa Rica and have been there for a few weeks. Can you tell people a little bit about, before we dive deeper, tell people a little bit about the retreat program you do and why Costa Rica?
Oh, yeah. So Prana Foundation retreats, we do 2 retreats a year. And I think everybody says their retreat is transformational. And we have this tagline that we say, give us 1 week and we'll change the rest of your life. And so far, it keeps coming to fruition. So, people come, we have 7 days, we do some chiropractic service, we learn chiropractic, philosophy, art, science, we do yoga, we breathe, we swim in the ocean, we have lots of playtime, and lives are ultimately changed. It's been such an incredible opportunity for us. You asked why Costa Rica. Tamara and I have been coming here to vacation for, I lost count. I think it's something like maybe 16 years now. And we started doing giving service to the local community on our own. And then we decided, hey, let's bring some others. And we keep coming back to the same community and offering care to the underserved here in Costa Rica. And so we have a real connection to this community, bringing more chiropractors in here to actually provide care to people who never would have access otherwise. So it's a real blessing. We're humbled for this opportunity to do that. And now getting to share it with so many incredible women with our retreats is just truly a blessing.
And Dr. Rochelle, my wife, was there and she loved it. She raved about it and she couldn't recommend it stronger. So I want all our listeners to know to put that on your bucket list to go to one of Prana Foundation's retreats for sure.
Thanks,
so yeah, I highly recommend it. She was just glowing and excited. Now there's a big
our next retreat. I'll just a little plug while you're mentioning it. Our next retreat is November 5th to the 11th, and it has 10 CE. So if we have women chiropractors listening who want to join us in November, we still have a few spots left. You just go to thepranaretreat.com.
Great. There you go. And we'll put that notes in the blog notes that go along with the podcast as well, so people have it. But I would add it to your list sooner rather than later. Now, there's a big word that is in your bio that some people know and some don't know, which is this word psycho-neuro-immunology. And a lot of people don't know what that word means or the importance of it. Can you share a little bit about your background in that and what psychoneuroimmunology is?
Yeah, sure. First, let me talk a little bit about psychoneuroimmunology. So, psycho has to do with the machinations of the mind. A lot of times
Mhm.
people associate psychology with, our mental processes, our behavior, our emotions, and that's correct. Everybody knows what neurology and immunology is, but how do they all come together? And what the heck was I doing studying it? So, when I was doing my undergraduate and graduate work in neuroscience, some of the research I was doing was specifically looking at the impact of stress on reward seeking behaviors. And so, what happens and it was in an animal model, mice. What happens in a mouse when you stress them? And will they continue? Do they get freaked out? And what does the neurochemistry look like? What does the immunological biomarkers look like when you create stress or reward for an animal? And it's really interesting because I think it's informed where I have gone in chiropractic and, maybe brings me to where I am today in this arena of vagus nerve, polyvagal theory, and looking at why do people respond the way that they do, depending on which autonomic neural platform they're in. So I've never strayed far from neuroscience. And some of my early work, my publications in psychoneuroimmunology, addiction, neurobiology of stress and reward is all sort of around that. I'm always been fascinated with the mind and how that is impacted by other physiological processes, because the mind is the one thing that we really do not understand very well.
Yeah, this is true. And we learn more things about it every day. And it's so amazing how much chiropractors study it very little.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
And what an incredible impact we have on the mind, right? People's
right,
lived experience is determined by how adaptive, resilient, clear, and free their nervous system is. And if it's not, you'll see that play out in psychology.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, a name that many people know associated with psychoneuroimmunology is Candace Pert. Can you share anything about who Candace Pert is and her works? I know you're familiar with it in your background.
Yeah, probably most people know Candace Pert for her book Molecules of Emotion, which was amazing. And she, probably less known unless you've read the book, was really responsible for uncovering some specifics around opioid receptors. And she died. She passed away, actually. I forget how
Right.
long ago now, but she was one of my early, I would hesitate to call her mentor. I would say she was an inspiration to me because, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I started in the field of neuroscience, there weren't a lot of women in neuroscience.
Mm.
And so her work and people like her have really, I think, spawned my interest in going further with that. There's a great quote that I love that's by another female neuroscientist,
Mhm.
um, whose name, of course, escapes me in this moment. Schatz is her last name, I believe.
Mhm.
So everybody knows this term, this neuroplasticity term, which is uh, neurons that fire together, wire together. And everybody attributes it to Donald Hebb, this famous Canadian dude who he certainly evolved the conversation around neuroplasticity, but he was not the purveyor of that statement. Neurons that fire together, wire together, neurons that fail, that are out of sync, fail to link is actually the second half. And I believe it was Dr. Rachel Schatz who was responsible. So lots of women in neuroscience who, I think it's exciting to see more and more leaders in our profession. Certainly Rochelle, for example, is a leader in the chiropractic profession, but there aren't a lot of women, running programs in chiropractic. I'd love to see more of that.
I would like to see more of them too. I asked about Candace Pert because she many years in a row would speak at network conventions almost every year for 2 or 3 years. And it was phenomenal to hear her speak. And when she came to Boulder at times, she would come and speak at Naropa here. She would contact me to check her spine. I had the joy of
Oh,
getting to check her spine because she wanted to get checked outside by Boulder Creek along the creek. So I had to carry the chiropractic tables because she wanted
oh yeah.
the environment of that, which was also really really special. and also understanding the importance of your environment in terms of your neurology when you're receiving care. It's very special soul. And that molecules of emotion, I quote it all the time in lectures and when teaching my patients to help them understand how that connection, how that's all connected to the spine and nerve system. And it's sad that more chiropractors don't know that and make a bigger link in terms of the nerve system. What kind of connections would you like more chiropractors to acknowledge in terms of chiropractic, the nerve system, and life beyond musculoskeletal, obviously?
Yeah, I think, a lot of time, if I'm talking to the Mile High tribe, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir when I say we need to get out of just talking about musculoskeletal. Because if we're just talking about back and neck pain, you're going to miss so many people, because our area of impact is only as far as the nervous system reaches, right? Which we know every cell, organ, and tissue in the body is impacted by our neurology. And so as chiropractors, I would love chiropractors to be more comfortable with talking about what an impact that we have on the autonomic nervous system, for example. And I think a lot of chiropractors, we've sort of got in these old practice management models of taking a lateral cervical and lumbar x-ray and doing, orthoneuros in the arms and legs and talking about that because it was a great educational tool. Well, and you probably heard me say this before, you can live without your arms and legs, but you can't live without your organs. And the greatest impact we have, most impactful from a purely physiological perspective, even though I don't believe that's the only impact, is what's happening in the autonomic nervous system. It's what drives 90% of the physiology of our body. So that the impact on our, we were talking about psychology earlier, our subjective lived experience is navigated by what happens in the mind. And as chiropractors, we're not just, clearing the nervous system, we're educating people. We got to start talking about all those other magical things that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a thing that we don't do enough. And we keep us, when we decide that we're just going to speak about this area of impact and paint ourselves into a small box. If you were to wave a magic wand above the chiropractic profession, and you say, I'd like it to be looking at this in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, what would you love to see? What would excite you?
What I would love is for chiropractic to be advanced to such a level that all facets of conventional science and medicine were actually looking to us for innovation. Imagine if we were educating the educators, right? Actually teaching people about the body from a holistic perspective, not just, the conventional allopathic approach. What if we were leading the way? Probably that's not going to happen in 5 years, but I'm still holding space for that.
And that's the key word is holding space. And part of that is our educational institutions as a whole have to stop putting us in a smaller and smaller box as the years go by.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, which would be beautiful. I know a lot of the energy that you and the Prana Foundation and Dr. Tamara put out has to do with that, as well as we do, and many of our people that we all know and love that are mutual friends. And that's, we like to see that inspired in more students. So if you were to talking students, and I know you talk to students very frequently, what would you tell them as they're in school or getting out of practice to fuel thriving as a chiropractor?
Yeah, I feel like students they seem to be very fatigued and disheartened right now. Like if you show up at events or host live events, go to schools for their big programs, oftentimes there's low student attendance. And I was actually just on a call the other night with the IFCO that they hold. That's like a student IFCO club online. And we were talking about this. I'm like, how do we get more students to show up? And so I guess what I would say is, I know you're tired. I know that you're pulled in a lot of directions, but the more you show up to these events, when you're a student, a lot of these events are free and you pay a lot when you're a doc and you have to pay those CE fees and all that stuff. But I would say, like the only way you're going to be a different person in 1 year from who you are today are the people you meet, the books you read, and the places you go. Well, if you're sitting at home on the sofa, your chance of changing your perspective, your presentation, your success 1 year from now is radically minimized by your lack of activity. So, not calling anybody out, but really take that as an invitation and encouragement to students to when people show up for you, show up for them. I make myself available all the time, and I'm often surprised at the low volume that I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen that, and I think the world is a little bit fatigued over the last 2 years. I know I myself was a lot to navigate. So, and I see it in students. I agree with you. I see it when I talk to them virtually or at events. At Mile High, the students that I saw were a little bit fatigued. They were excited to be there, and they also were like, "Wow, it's been a lot." Which reminds me, Mile High. You've been a presenter at Mile High a handful of times. Tell how was Mile High the last time for you?
I'm not just saying this because I'm on this call with you, because I say it all the time. Mile High is 100% my favorite event to come to because it just feels like it's pure love, Danny. And the message is always clear and strong. The people are amazing. I know that you and Rochelle make every effort to have a ton of women on the stage, and you should be commended for that because, not everybody does. And there's a lot of women that have an incredible message, just as many as there are men. So thank you for that. Last year was a new location, which I actually thought was really cool. Loved it. I don't know if you're going to do it there again next year, but of all the events, I always look forward to coming back to Mile High because for me, I feel like the cellular vibration, right? It's like love is molecular at Mile High, and I'm sure that's not just because Donnie's there, but it's a good vibe. Yeah.
This is every time I see things that you post and Tamara Pat post, I feel like kindred spirits, and I appreciate you saying that because when you carve out a niche of identifying who you are, it attracts the like-minded people. So I'm glad it's brought that from both the people that are on stage and in the audience. And thank you so much for saying that. And it means the world. And I guess I'll say it here because this can be the first place I say it. I haven't said it before. We are going back to the same hotel we did. People loved and raved about it so much that we're going to go to that location again, and they loved having us. So they were very thrilled with both the attendees, and it was fun. So that's where we'll be in September. Which brings me to the next question: where are you headed to next? So you've been in Costa Rica for 10 weeks. I'm sure that's been phenomenal. And I'm sure the wheels were spinning on some future things that you were going to do. So what's next in store for you in the rest of 2022?
Yeah, so we have a bit of a whirlwind fall coming up. We leave here day after tomorrow. And then 5 days after that, we head to Europe. We're doing our applied polyvagal for the first time in person in the UK. So the Lions of Chiropractic is in the UK. Actually has a similar vibe to Mile High, but across the pond. So we're doing applied polyvagal there. The Lions of Chiropractic event, which is a weekend, experience. I'll then be in Paris speaking there, and then maybe Barcelona. We have a few days. Our big CE retreat. And then we have a big fun event at Esalen in December. So it's full up.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. Yeah. Super exciting. Super exciting. And so you're going to be over there for how long?
Europe for 2 weeks and a bit, down in Australia for about 10 days, then back to Costa Rica for 3 weeks.
Oh, cool. So another home base back in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I hope on one of these trips our paths cross so we can meet somewhere like Costa Rica, Australia, or Europe.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah. I miss my people.
Yes. So now polyvagal. Tell us a little bit. What's applied polyvagal mean for the people that are, huh? What is that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because, people often say, what does that have to do with chiropractic? And the basic tenet of polyvagal theory is really about helping people restore core regulation and not treating symptoms. Sounds a lot like chiropractic, doesn't it? And what we do is we help restore neural regulation without treating symptoms. And so essentially, Stephen Porges developed polyvagal theory in the 90s to explain why people behave the way that they do when their physiology responds to stress in their environment. And literally, you can look at, he calls the neural platforms, the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic nervous system. He calls them neural platforms, and we split the vagus, right? Without getting into a lot of details, you can look at any person and tell which part of their autonomic nervous system is activated. And from that, you will be able to assess them based on a subset of behaviors, emotions, and strategies. And really, I think the reason why, Tamara and I are both excited about polyvagal is because it gives us a lexicon to speak about the autonomic nervous system when we apply a polyvagal lens to chiropractic. They're not just similar. I think there's a real symbiotic relationship. I think a lot of chiropractors struggle when it comes to talking about the autonomic nervous system. And what polyvagal does is it allows us a lexicon that I think most chiropractors can get behind. So we've been really focused on teaching more and more chiropractors about that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what are some reasons that people to inspire chiropractors to learn more? What would inspire them to say, hey, you know what, I should check out this applied polyvagal thing?
Well, so we have taught hundreds of chiropractors apply polyvagal for now, and so many of our docs who literally you do the week at it's a 3 hour. Right now, we're looking at expanding it because we keep adding more and more material. This 3 hour class. After that, you can go back to office on Monday and start applying the strategies. It does not take more time. It gives you tools that you can give your patients some very simple strategies that actually put some responsibility on them to learn to regulate their nervous system. And it improves your ability to talk about your impact, right? And I think in doing that, you create I think when you put some responsibility back on your practice member, your patient, and you educate them, they really buy into what it is that you're doing. They see that you're trying to elevate not just their lives, but their families, their communities, and it has a huge impact. And all the docs that are using it say that change the elevation and how quickly they see shifts in their patients is like nothing they've seen before.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I highly recommend people check it out, and we'll also have information to find more about that in the blog that goes along with this. Shifting directions a little bit, chiropractors. One of the things that I see so frequently is they will say that they're removing interference. They'll say that they're correcting subluxations. And say, hey, don't talk about symptoms. All we do is remove subluxations, and then may not have some way of assessing that that's actually changing for the better. May not actually, it just, there was a pop or something like that.
Yeah.
How important is it for that to shift in the chiropractic arena, especially the subluxation adjustment focused chiropractors?
Yeah, what a great question. Danny, I think that was a strategy used years ago. Like you don't have to explain what you're doing. You just, the power that made the body heals the body and you're done. And I think now, today, given that our science has evolved so much, I actually think it's a very lazy approach. I'm just going to say that. Some people might not like it. I think that we have, the internet and the access to information has changed radically in the last 40 years. And our client base is so much more educated than they ever were. And so I think that we need to do the work to make sure that we truly are the experts that we espouse to be. And when you fail to be able to explain what it is that we're doing, some of it from a physical perspective, some of it from a metaphysical perspective. I'm not saying it all has to be, you don't have to explain neuroscience all day, but you should be able to, put your money where your mouth is and explain to people, look, this is what's actually happening. And this is why we're having an impact. It's been some incredible research that's been done, still lots of research that needs to be done, but let's give credit where it's due and accept that patients are smarter today. And so we can't be shy about making some statements about how it is that what we're doing works and why. And we have lots of science today. So, maybe read some, maybe take Dr. Monod's master class.
Yeah, that would be smart. And I do think raising the bar in terms of assessing, and look, I've seen people use so many interesting things for outcome assessments that there's so many possibilities. You don't have to follow a cookbook of what, some practice management person necessarily.
Yeah.
I have a series that work for me. However, it's vital actually so to a person that we're seeing you change in some way. And
yeah, thanks for coming back to that piece, Danny, because you're absolutely right. I think that we need to show that we can measure that we're doing what we say and measure whether that is, doing HRV, doing thermal scans, doing outcome assessment tools and screens. Like we have to be able to show that we're making a difference, that we say that we're doing this and here's evidence that we're actually seeing change. Because unless you're checking, great, you find a subluxation, locate, analyze, correct. You got to go back and check. The pop doesn't determine whether or not you've actually effected change, whether or not you've cleared the nervous system. So yes, reassessment, assess, reassess. Otherwise, where's the validity?
Right. And people today, you said something vital, they're at a different educational level and they have a different expectation. Now you can meet them at a lower expectation, and we know chiropractic offices that do that, and there may be a market for that. However, there's more educated consumer today when it comes to healthcare, and they have certain expectations that even hospitals and the medical profession is doing in terms of assessments. And it's time for us to raise the bar in terms of that, and then people will expect more of chiropractic.
I read the other day somewhere that it's estimated that within another 10 years, probably 30% of people will be wearing biometric wearables, right? So, information about heart rate, blood saturation, heart rate variability. People are into it. Like neuroscience is sexy, and people are very interested in learning more and more about how their body works, how their physiology, creates their experience that they're having. And I think the well-educated chiropractor, the well-informed chiropractor who's not afraid to be talking with their patients about these kinds of things and actually employing and using these tools in their practice, they're going to be the go-to in their communities.
Yeah. I'm going to quote you on that. Neuroscience is sexy. That's great.
Yeah.
And, I've had practice members tell us that says, no chiropractor's ever done this or assessed it. It's the most thorough about it. And I'm like, we're not doing anything that's all that. The bar is kind of low. So it's a great opportunity. Yeah. Sadly, I'd like the bar to be higher, but the expectation is low, and chiropractors doing some kind of outcome assessment makes you stand out and differentiate you. And by the way, when you differentiate yourself, it gives you a little leeway to charge more, because people know doing something at a different level than the person down the street, and people will pay more for it, So that's another bonus.
Yeah. And I think it shows your client base that you respect them.
Right.
That you respect them enough to show them, hey, look, I'm not just saying this. These are the changes that we're seeing. And, it improves, obviously, retention, referrals. And
let's now objective outcome assessments. Here's the interesting thing. Subjective outcome assessments. No, those were a no to talk about, right? Don't talk about the subjective things and the person feeling and like that they're in their pain. I I think subjective outcome assessments are great to talk about. And you have to put it in the correct context.
Yeah.
How important are subjective outcome assessments to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you said something earlier about chiropractors saying, "Oh, we don't want to talk about pain. We don't
Right.
want to talk about we don't talk about that in this office." I think that's happening less and less. I hope it's happening less and less
I agree.
because, the not just what your patients tell you, but how they say it, how
Yeah.
often, all of these things are important, right? It's why we do a SOAP note. What is their subjective complaint? What is their experience? Because it tells you a lot. Is it referential to a sensation? Is there a movement engaged? Things like that. Like, it gives you perspective on their experience, and it shows them that you care about what's happening in their lives.
And you can talk about these things and subjective experiences without treating a condition or being therapeutic. That was the fear that people would think that if I talk about it, they think I'm treating them or trying to make the headaches go away or being therapeutic, versus that you can talk about it and understand where the person is relative to the relationship of where they are in their healing process and their relationship to their body. Are they alienating themselves from their body, or they're being with this as it's a guide for me? And that's a different part in their of where they are relative to understanding healing for themselves.
Oh, yeah. And the language they use informs you of where they're at. Like, if you look at in network care, 12 stages of healing, right? The language people choose to use tells you a lot about where they are within that reference framework.
Right, as
Um,
compared to just saying, hey, don't tell me about this.
yeah, that's crazy. I
Yeah,
hope no chiropractors listening is doing that.
I hope so too. Or they start getting in a different direction. It's not being afraid of it. And it doesn't mean
Yeah.
therapeutic. It's not mean you're treating their diseases, but or conditions, or saying you're promising something, but talking to them as a person, you
Yeah, no,
know?
I think it absolutely gives you essential information. It gives you context about that patient's experience. It also lets them know that you care. I
Yeah,
read this study that talked about why medical doctors get sued. And a lot of people think it's because of medical error. It's not. The number one reason medical doctors get sued is because it appears as though they don't care. It's not even about the amount of time. It's if
right,
they appear as though they're not interested in your story.
right.
Something that we do have is a skill set to be able to get the right information out of people. It's not like you have to do an hour-long history. You can, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not about adding more time to even a visit to be able to, inquire as to people's experience since their last visit.
Right, exactly, exactly. So, well, I really appreciate you sharing all this. And is there any last thing that you'd like to say to the Mile High audience?
Yeah, no, don't be shy to reach
Yeah,
out. I mean, here's the thing, a lot of times, and even what we just said, when I said, I hope there's no chiropractor doing that. And if you are, just like Danny said, maybe this will be an impetus for you to shift and change. I'm always happy to chat with docs and students. If you have questions, reach out to me anytime.
yeah. And I have to tell you again, I so appreciate, and I want people to know the message that you're bringing to the profession, and how much you're uplifting, uh, making neuroscience sexy. We'll just say it that way. As compared to uh, us being in uh, staying in a bone, we fix bones and fix
Yeah.
joint concerns language. It's time for us to embrace. I really feel that we're in a new renaissance of the chiropractic principle, and that involves embracing our philosophy, science, and art from a new perspective, or a larger perspective, which doesn't mean changing our scope or practicing medicine.
Yeah,
So,
no, or stepping away from philosophy in any way. In fact, the more and more neuroscience that becomes available, I think actually supports our philosophy. And
right.
that's the angle that I always take it from when I am lecturing. It's like, these are not, philosophy and science are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they're a beautiful blend together that I think really give us a deeper understanding of our purpose.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you again for everything that you and Tamara are doing. I'm so excited about European tour. I can't wait to see the pictures. Um, and also thank you for giving so much and helping so many chiropractors and students,
Mm.
because I know you're impacting them for the better. And keep changing. Tell everyone. Well, actually, tell them one more time. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can go to the Prana Foundation website, which is pranafound.org. We're on Instagram, Dr. Monique Andrews on Instagram and Facebook. You can email me, Dr. Mo, DRMO at drmoniqueandrews.com. We're all over social media. It's easy to find me. Yeah, please reach out with any questions.
And check out Applied Polyvagal and the upcoming courses in Europe. And everyone who's listening, we look forward to seeing you rise up to Mile High in 2023 and keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.